Hey, everybody, in today's episode, it's myself, Destiny, and our guest is Chris. Chris comes on the show to discuss his sobriety journey over the last 7 years. Now, let me just tell you one thing. Go ahead and grab a tissue box because you're going to need it. In fact, Destiny needed it on multiple occasions, and I almost needed it. So if that doesn't say anything. Chris comes on to talk about what it took for him to finally get clean and sober. He's been in and out of institutions, jails, prisons, practically his whole entire life. That's what he knows. It's where he was comfortable. Addiction affected him in ways that we can't even wrap our head around in some cases. But there was a particular moment and a particular person that changed his life forever. And he talks in detail about why this relationship is so important to him today. He talks about bouts with anxiety, bouts with depression, the importance of community, why it's important for him to reach out to other addicts and alcoholics. Even today, 7 years clean and sober, still communicates with people in recovery on a daily basis. He gives you a blueprint on what to do to get clean and sober. And in the end, if you have any issues or questions or concerns about getting sober, if this man can do it, this in and of itself should be hope for you that you can do it. We cover all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got D-Dog.
What's up, guys?
And we have Chris. Chris is from the Palms. Chris, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. Right, peeps?
Always.
Destiny, thank you for this coffee.
You're welcome.
What is this? What was it called? A mochaccino hug?
What? No. A holiday hug latte. As it was sold to me, marshmallow with a side of peppermint.
Very tasty.
Very good.
It's got a lot of milk.
I said oat milk.
Oh, gosh. Oat milk.
I don't know.
Gonna have blue hair next, Destiny.
It was made with love.
Thank you.
Chris, what's up, man?
Hey, nothing much, boss.
Glad you can make it on. Destiny set this up. So we had 3 people all from the Palms. We had Lee come on first. Or no, we had Ian come on first. Ian is the founder and CEO of the Kratom Task Force.
Yep. Yes, he is.
Um,
I almost wore my shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like,
that would have been
That would have been
funny.
And then we had Lee come on, and Lee's actually from our area. You know, he's from Pittsburgh. And here you are. And come to find out, you're from very close to where I grew up too. Youngstown, Warren.
Northeast Ohio.
Yeah. Shout out Tony Hinchcliffe being from Youngstown, Ohio. You watch Kill Tony?
No.
No? Ask Lee about it. He'll get you. Do you like stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
It's on YouTube every Monday at 9 o'clock. So, Kill Tony. So anyways, Destiny set this up. So Destiny, why don't you go ahead and do the intro, and then we're going to get right into it.
Well, intro's not hard, right? Because it's all about action when you're in the program. I don't know Chris that well. However, I've heard his story. I've heard guys talk about him. I know that you sponsor a lot of men. Everybody has great things to say about you. It's, a man with integrity, humility that does the work. I do know his wife and his daughter. And he just, fantastic guy all around. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. To be completely honest with you, he's kind of not a closed off guy, but just quiet. So when I asked him to do the podcast, I totally thought he was going to be like, no, I like to keep it humble. You know what I mean? Like, I don't do all that stuff. But he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. So
at first glance, if you're not watching on YouTube, I encourage you to watch on YouTube. Chris has quite a lot of tattoo. Are your legs done too?
No, just the upper body.
Just the upper? Okay. Well, you got plenty of canvas, blank canvas to work on. At first glance, obviously covered in tattoos, bald head, looks intimidating. But here's the thing. I can tell from the second that you walked in, that whole energy thing. And I'm not one to get into all the
Oh, I am.
I am. But just an all around good dude. And I don't even know you. So let's just jump right into this. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit of your backstory, but ultimately, we're going to shift into the recovery component because that's the most important. So I'll let you take it from here.
So, like we mentioned earlier, originally born and raised Northeast Ohio. All my family, everybody's still up there. I don't know, for what it's worth, too many people who make it out.
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
try and pull the mic a little bit closer to you.
Here, wait a second.
Up close and uncomfortable.
Yeah,
there we go. Oh,
right here.
Much better.
Yeah.
Much
we had
better.
to do that. I told him in the beginning, I'm really soft spoken. So, the microphone's definitely a help. But no, from Northeast, not too many people make it out of there. It's like generation after generation. People are just happy with working a factory job till you retire and that's it, and, a little bit of the beginning of my story, I grew up around the disease of addiction. My dad, my superhero, best man in the world, best person I ever known, but was a drunk, blue collar guy, hung drywall my entire life, worked, took care of me, my little brother, and drank. That's just what it was, and then my mother was an addict too. And in and out of our lives, would be around for a year or two, disappear for a couple of years, be around for disappear. And, probably the most solid foundation that we had though was most definitely my grandmother. My grandmother was the saving grace. The woman was a saint. And loved me to a fault, So, growing up, there wasn't much. The disease took action in my life from the gate, using since a single digit age. Heavily addicted to opiates by the time I was 12, 13. And shooting dope by the time I was 15, so it was that, once I picked up for the first time, because I always had this uneasiness with the stuff going on with my mom, with the stuff going on with my dad. There was always this question of I wasn't good enough, my mom in and out of my life and seeing her get abused and the men that she was around. And always having this idea of why is she picking these other men over me? Mm. So it was the first time that I did find anything, it was finally the answer. I was finally all right with who Chris was, and it was all the chips were in at that point where it was this is what we got to do. And as long as we have this, we might just be all right, and it was so the lifestyle just engulfed me completely. The last number grade that I completed was 7th grade. In and out of trouble, in and out of juvenile institutions, and just the progression all happened, And I remember the first time, because my life was unmanageable for a long time. And the first time that I ever tried to get clean, it was trying to jump through a legal loophole, but I ended up in this adolescent facility, and it was the first time that H&I had come in. And
describe H&I.
So H&I is hospitals and institutions. So it's whatever fellowship, they have a service committee that brings in meetings into institutions where people can't attend meetings, whether it's a jail, whether it's a detox facility, a hospital. these people in this service committee will bring in meetings to people to let them know the message of recovery. So it was like the first introduction. H and I had come in, and it was like the first little glimmer of hope, you know?
How old were you at this point?
I was 17.
Okay.
17 years old in this adolescent facility. And I remember when I was getting discharged from this place, I was going to move in with my mom for the first time in my entire life. She had just gotten kind of clean. And, you know, at that point, my dad was just like, you know, I have no experience with this. I don't know what to do with them. Like, maybe you could help. And I remember I'd get out and I'd go to meetings. And like I said, like for the first time in my life, like this little candle, you know, it was such a dark place. And finally this little candle was lit. And like there was some light of hope. And I'd try to get her to go to meetings with me. You know, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to the meeting, but you want to, and she'd be like, no, that's not for me. That's not for me. And she also suffered from like mental health issues and stuff too. But I would see her like clean, but not like an ounce of solution or hope in her life. You know what I mean? Like just this shell of a person. And, dude, inevitably, and I truly believe like as a direct result of the disease of addiction, you know, untreated addiction, my mother actually ended up taking her own life and passed away on my 18th birthday, actually. So it's like, even now, like coming up, like my birthday's 2 days after Christmas, and it's like every birthday is the anniversary of her passing, you know? And it was like, after that, like the disease already ran my life, and then there was this glimmer of hope, but like after that, you know, I threw in all the cards. It was off to the races, just constantly using, constantly hurting everybody around me until I went to jail, until I could get back out and do it again and go back to jail. You know, that's all my life revolved around, was getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. And dude, the truth is like, I didn't think that there was a snowball's chance in hell that anybody like me could ever get and stay clean. Yeah. You know, that was just the furthest thing from reality.
I mean, do you need
I'm
the
like,
tissues?
I'm like almost in tears. Holy cow.
Shout
Ooh.
out to Tammy. Tammy, we bust out Tammy's tissue box.
Oh, Tammy, thank you. Holy jeez Louise.
Destiny's easy to shed tears.
I'm a sensitive person, but that ooh.
If I just put myself in that area, you know, considering where we grew up, I can see I totally agree with what you're saying. It's really difficult for people to get out of there.
Yeah.
I talk to friends still to this day that are up there, very few, but, and I always ask them, you know, what's going on up there in Newcastle, you know, oh, nothing, same stuff.
Yeah.
And I was there probably 4 years, maybe. Yeah, it was for Levi's 5th birthday. So this would have been almost 4 years ago. And I took him to his first Penguin game and, you know, just showed him like Pittsburgh and the city and stuff like that. And then we went and spent a couple days in Newcastle just to see some of my friends. And I ran into some of the same people doing the same things. And I'm like, geez, oh man. But knowing where you grew up and being in that lifestyle, I can see how it's just, there is no hope.
Yeah. It's just, you know, gray skies, this doom and gloom, you know,
all year,
yeah,
practically.
Yeah. And nobody sees like a way out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, that's what is, you know, the truth is, I wouldn't even go, especially the way that I was living. Like, I wouldn't go to, like, people are like, oh, you're from Ohio? And I'm like, well, no, I'm from Northeast Ohio. Like, I didn't go to Western Ohio. I didn't go to Central Ohio. I didn't go South. Like, I was stuck right up there, you know, and it was like, because there was just so much chaos, like I found enough of it where I was at. I didn't need to create no more anywhere else that I went, you know. And it's like, it's funny because there's a buddy of mine that I grew up with. I've known him since I was probably like 12 years old, and was able to help get him clean. Now he's like, I think he's got like a couple years.
Oh, great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, working in treatment, doing all this stuff. And he's literally probably the only person I know that I grew up with that's not dead or in prison.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, the game that we played, that was like the reality of what we all got.
Where was your brother? Is your brother older or younger?
Younger brother.
And where's he throughout all this? Is he like the complete opposite of you, or?
No, in a lot of ways, yes. But it's like funny because like my brother was like the success story, which like the success story was like you graduated high school, you know what I mean? But like he had lost his older brother so long ago. Like him and my grandma, like this is him, you know, at maybe like 10 years old. You know, him and my grandmother having to like come in the living room in the middle of the night to put out my cigarettes because I nodded out with a cigarette and I almost burnt the house down.
Mm.
You know, and then, you know, even me stealing from him and then like in these institutions. So like in a lot of ways, like, you know, that poor kid got abandoned.
How much younger is he than you?
Oh, 5 years? Yeah, 5 years younger. So he's like 27, 28 now. And the kid, you know, he still lives, you know, Niles, Ohio. You know, works a you know, blue collar job.
Yeah.
Does this thing, has his house, you know, a few minutes from dad's house. But
Your dad's still alive?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep, dad's still alive.
Did he get sober?
So it's funny.
I don't know if you're going to send this to dad. So
No. He can watch. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? No, it's funny. So growing up, my brother, I was maybe like 11. My brother got taken away, got sent to my mom after a while because my dad drinking and he got into it with somebody, ta-da. And then my dad actually got clean for like 4 years and stayed clean for 4 years, was going to meetings, doing this and doing that. But then, you know, inevitably like ended up finding his purpose. Like he's like one of the higher ups in like a motorcycle club.
Oh, okay.
And I think he found like his sense of purpose and sense of meaning in that club, you know, and now like, you know, he drinks occasionally and does stuff like that, but it's nothing like it was when we were growing up.
Yeah.
You know, and that was always like a big thing with like me and my recovery where it was like, you know, I'm not my dad. You know what I mean? Like my dad found this way to be able to, but I can't. You know,
there are people out there. They must not be built like us and whatever. My dad was the same way.
Yeah,
you know, and I don't know. I've never tested the waters though.
Yeah, that's why I'm like.
But for me, it's just not worth it. Destiny, what do you got up to this point?
So my mind has gone there because I see people, you know, that can kind of just like slow it down. However, I just made a promise to myself that like I am different and I'm going to focus on me and I'm not willing to take that chance.
Yeah.
And everything that I've worked on for 7 years, we're just going to continue to do. I've got too much going on in life right now. I get to give, I get to love, I get to show up, and that's great for those people. If it worked, I'm just not willing to take that chance. I don't focus on other people that can do that. Like, we're going to do me. History has proven, though, there's a good chance that's probably not me. So we're not even going to risk it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's like one of those things like, you know, even accepting yourself as an addict or whatever it is, it's like a personal admission. Nobody could do it for you. And it's like, the same thing on a daily basis, just staying clean where, you know, it's like first you get clean to like have a life and then you build a life that's worth staying clean for. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like I would never risk the things that I have in my life today to pick up one more of whatever it is.
No. And physically, right? So like tattoos, bald, I mean, let's just be real. You look like you just stepped out of prison, right? But then like, and you and I didn't know each other that well, but then you hear that story, you know, of like your addiction and what you've been through, and then seeing and hearing the man that you are with the solution that you input into your life. It's like two completely different people. You know what I'm saying? Like I sit here and I listen to your story and I'm like, that's absolutely insane. But that just goes to show when you actively work your program and you have a solution in your life, like it's, you know, it's incredible.
Yeah. Cause it's like, you know, it's just matter of factly, like, you know, when all the tattoos, all this, like getting clean was not part of the plan. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, and in a lot of ways, even like first in recovery, bringing up like a lot of people think I'm an asshole, and
I can identify with that.
Yeah, you know, but the
he
truth
actually is though. So
yeah, well, but and like you said, like because I am very closed off. You know, people see me at meetings and stuff. Like I'm usually like in the back, just kind of with my head, and like really, it's because I'm a very anxious, especially in social settings where like I keep my head down, I stay quiet, and like a lot of like people look at it as like I'm like intimidating or closed off or like mean, but it's like still, dude, I don't care, yours clean or not. It's like I'm still like scared inside. You know what I mean? It's like don't let. And, you know, who knows, like in a lot of the ways, it's hard to look back now, but like maybe that was a lot of the reason for the tattoos and the stuff like that to put on, you know, it was just like another defense.
Yeah.
To put on the facade, like, like, I'm not even approachable.
Exactly.
See, that's great. It just goes to show you never know what somebody's going through, because here it is. People are like, absolutely not. This dude is an intimidating asshole. Like, we're not even going to approach him. And then meanwhile, you talk about being anxious and scared and just not really wanting to be social in a social setting.
Yeah, and it's just a safe thing to do. You know, it's like all my life, you know, even through active addiction and institutions and even coming into early recovery, you know what I mean, was like had to protect myself. You know what I mean? So like in a lot of ways, just like back then, and especially in early recovery, it was like, you know, you got to keep everybody at arm's distance because, you know, and even just like the fear of like, if they know who you really are, they might not even like you as it is. So put on this for some, you know, keep them away because that's just a safer thing to do.
Well, that's what I think that's what you were used to doing your whole life.
Yeah, 100%.
And the reality of it is you're very approachable.
Yeah.
It's the outside that makes you look intimidating.
Yeah.
Some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life were from an outside perspective. Like you don't go. As a matter of fact, there was a guy that I used to drink with in Newcastle, and he's passed away now, but he was in a pretty prominent biker gang.
Yeah.
The Outlaws. And I can't say his name. I want to because it's funny, but I'm not going to. This guy was so intimidating. I mean, he came in with his ape hangers and, you know, covered in tattoos, did prison time. But I had some of the most constructive conversations with this guy,
so cool.
You know, that like talk about wisdom. He had it. And granted, we're both drinking at the bar and stuff like that, but it just goes to show, what's the saying? You don't judge a book by its cover, right, D-Dog?
Right. We got one that works here that's pretty intimidating if you would see it. Eric. He's got the, what do you call that, goatee. He sometimes braids it. Covered.
He's covered in tattoos
on his neck, just like you, arms, everything. You know, tall, stocky guy. Like, you know what I mean? He looks like.
And he's got he was trained like professional, like
Muay Thai or something like that.
Yeah. He's but you know what?
Biggest teddy bear.
Yeah. One of the nicest guys.
Most kind, generous, supportive men that man that you would ever meet.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's transition now. You didn't just end up in Florida by chance. You somehow made your way down here.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually like kind of tricked. So, my aunt, because it's funny, I don't know exactly the backstory, but I believe like my mother came down here a few times for treatment.
Okay.
So like my sister's mom, it was just like end of the road, completely out of my mind. And she's like, well, hey, you get to go to Florida, you know, palm tree, sunshine, bada boom, bada bing, and hopped on a plane and I was down here. And that was the first time I came down here was 2014. And it was like one of those, like I ended up in the facility and it took me like a week. It took me like a week to come to because, you know, actually prior to that, like how she even like dove in, it was like I tried to like take my own life. And then like came to, and the things that I tried to overdose with had me, you know, I was hallucinating for like a week straight, completely out of it. And even came to Florida, and it took like a solid, you know, 6 days before I was like able to like blink, like, okay, where the fuck, you know, where am I at? You know, this isn't Northeast Ohio.
This ain't Ohio.
You know what I mean?
We ain't Kansas anymore.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it was like tricky, but even that experience then is like what gave me the experience that I needed to when I did come back down here to get clean. I was like, yo, I want to go back to Florida. You know, I experienced a sense of like friendship and community and purpose that I never had before.
So you came down in 2014 and went to treatment?
Yeah.
Can I ask where you went?
So then I went, it was TBT.
The best treatment center?
Yeah. Billboards everywhere, everything like that.
Are they still open?
Yes.
Huge place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like something else now though.
And then
Is it?
Different name, yeah.
how long were you down here that time?
I was down here from July of 14, and then I ended up getting locked up October of 14.
Oh, for that incident.
Yeah, for the incident.
For that incident.
Yeah, there was an incident that occurred.
There was an incident that we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So you got locked up and you spent some time down here in Gun Club?
Yeah, so I did. I was in Gun Club, and then they shipped me over. I was in Belglade jail for like 6 months, and then they got to bring you back over to Gun Club to send you down to the reception prison in Miami. So it was like Gun Club, Belglade, Gun Club, off to the races.
And then when you got out of that sentence, which I think before we started recording you said was 15 months.
Yeah, 15 months.
That's when you went back to Ohio?
Yeah, so I went back to Ohio because I actually still had pending legal issues back there. Oh. And then it was actually the prison system's one that they bought me a Greyhound ticket back to Ohio. And I went up there, ran amok for like a couple weeks, and then just turned myself back in again.
And did you do prison time when you went back? Or?
Yeah. I went back to prison in Ohio for like 9 more months.
Did you get clean in prison or no?
No, I used in there.
Can I ask, and this is just out of my own curiosity, there's a listener that, we're in a lot of prisons and jails. And one of the guys that listens pretty intently, he's serving an 18-year sentence.
Okay.
And he got clean in prison about 3 years ago.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because even when I was up there, and it was like especially funny like the last time, because I went to the prison that I went to, and there was like probably a dozen of us, people that I'd known since like a single digit age, all my friends, you know? But then there's this other guy, he was from like the city of Lorain in Ohio. And I met him and I was still using, and he was doing 8 years, used his first 3, and got clean while he was in there. And I remember me and him were like, that was like my boy, you know, and he would never judge me or ever shun me for using, you know, he'd just be like, hey, you know, like, you done beating yourself up yet? And, but I used to see him sitting on the bunk with other guys, going over step work and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it was like, and he's out now and he's still clean, still up in Ohio. And it was like, and he didn't even realize it then. And like I said, he never shunned me, never judged me for like what I was doing. But like, you know, he was one of the people that like sparked that flint
right
inside of me.
Seeds.
Yeah. Where it's like, yo, if, you know, just maybe if he could get and stay clean, like maybe, you know, maybe I could too. And, yeah. So listen, shout out, you know, people get clean and stay clean in institutions, and you're able to carry a message of hope that, you know, maybe nobody else ever could to these people.
And I think I've never spent a day in jail, thank God, but I could imagine getting some sort of sentencing, especially long-term sentence, like it's got to help with your overall just perspective of being in there, and probably helps you, you know, do your time, I guess.
Yeah. You find acceptance in it all. It's just like, in a lot of ways, doing time is just like staying clean, where it's just like you end up building a routine and
one
you
day
just
at a time.
get through this day by day, you know, and it buzzes by.
Eventually it becomes normal. Like you wake up, you do your thing, you watch TV, you take a nap, you eat, you know, it just, it
just
becomes
life.
routine.
You know, that, you know, and even back then, like that was just life. That's just like what it was, you know, and even like still, you know, one of my very best friends growing up, me and him were there for each other and loved each other when nobody else could, you know? And he was one of those like dozen people I was in with the last time. And I think he was doing like 5 years at the time. I got out just before him and got clean. And we'd still, you know, he would call and we'd still talk on the phone. And he'd be like, hey, listen, man, like, you know, like people come in doing H&I and stuff, but I don't know these people, you know? He's like, but I know you and I see that you stay clean, and it makes me believe that I could do it too, you know? And then, but he got out and was in, you know, we used heavy drugs, but just got out, was drinking and smoking weed, and got in a car accident and killed 2 people.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, and so he did like 5 years, was only out for 60 days, and then got sentenced to another 15 years.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and it's like, you know, like that old saying, just like, you know, there, you know, again, there goes I.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And just like the reality of like what recovery has given me. It's like, that's my best friend, and that's what he's got to accept right now because of what happened. And then my life in recovery, where it's like, you know, I found my wife in recovery. I have my daughter in recovery. I have another daughter on the way. You know, I help other people stay clean, and other people help me stay clean on a daily basis. And just like, you know, in a lot of ways, people think of like this life beyond your wildest dreams, but it was like, our reality was in these institutions and using, and this is what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. Where if somebody talked about the way that my life looks today, was the furthest thing from reality for any of us.
Right.
You know?
That's so true. I always say a life beyond your wildest dreams. I don't think I was mentally capable of imagining the life that I have today by staying clean and living in the solution and taking care of myself so like I can help other people. I wasn't capable of that whatsoever.
Yeah. People like me are not productive members of society. We don't work jobs. We don't stay clean. We don't help other people. We don't be good husbands and good fathers like that. Where I come from in active addiction, like people like me did not do that kind of stuff.
You end up in either prison or dead.
I was going to say, it sounds like you just don't make it.
Yeah.
Really is
Jails,
the reality
institutions,
of it.
and death.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the 3 certains for anybody that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And then even like if you don't end up in jail or an institution, arguably just having to live that lifestyle every day is just as bad.
No, just what, like, it was funny. I was at a meeting last night and the guy was like talking about it where, like, you know, the first time, you know, when you use, the first thing that goes is your spirit, you know, and it's like, even though you may not get locked up in an institution or die like a physical death, like that death of the spirit is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
You know, walking around just a shell of a person, not in touch with anything, you know, that's scarier in a lot of ways.
You'll never be able to use the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So you got out, you ended up down in Florida again, went back to treatment?
Yeah. Went back to treatment. And, you know, by this time I'd been in and out of treatment for years, you know, and it was, you know, in the back of my mind, like, I know everything they're going to say kind of thing, you know, but like, and truthfully, like, not really knowing if I wanted to get clean, but in my heart, knowing that I couldn't go on, like, keep going on the way that I was. Like, I just couldn't. It wasn't. And I just so happened to fall around these group of people who, they actually all worked there. You know what I mean? And like,
worked where?
So
at the center?
Yeah, at the center, at the treatment facility. And still to the, you know, I'm talking about, you know, the owner, the group facilitator, my therapist, still to this day, my very best friends. The owner of that facility is the one who bought my daughter her first stroller.
Oh, nice.
You know, like 7 years later, like still in the home group together, still like these guys have known me since I was too sick to even be able to sit up in group. So they let me lay on the floor, you know, and to continue to grow and build our lives, you know, all together has been, you know, it wasn't even like so much of like, and I always think about like, what would have happened if I didn't go back to treatment, you know, and it wasn't even so much, the biggest thing was like, if I didn't go back to treatment that time, I would have probably never met these guys. And if I never met these guys, I probably would not be clean today.
Right.
You know, like that's how impactful, you know, just, you know, the fellowship as a whole is, you know, one of those like what you can never do alone, we do together things.
Yeah.
And that's recover.
When you got with people, you connected with people that had time and had that solution in their life.
Yeah.
That's what kept me clean, was like inside my sober living, like, yeah, I was friends with the girls or whatever, but like I started building my foundation outside of that with people who had years, like who had time in this program, because let's be honest, what are the statistics? People in treatment are going to die. They're going to go back out, or, you know, they're just going to go home.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's what you did. You connected with people that already had this solution, that like already had a foundation that would call you out on your bullshit, you know, that would keep you accountable, and like that could help guide you, you know, which is super important.
Yeah. And it's wild because like really like they grabbed a hold of me, you know, by like at this point in the game was like this lost cause addict, you know, like society, myself, like everybody else had given up on me, you know, and it was like, but these guys like seen something in me that I didn't even know was there, and like, and loved me to death, you know, despite of like Chris, you know what I mean? Showed nothing but, and it was like those guys, for the first time in a long time, I felt like they actually cared, you know? And it was like, that's what grabbed me, You know, it wasn't so much of even like a solution or this or that. I'm like, wow, these guys really, really fucking care about me. And
ooh, here I go, tearing up again.
You need another tissue from the.
I still have my last one somewhere. I don't even know.
Here
Maybe
you go.
you threw it on the floor.
Shout out to Tammy. Oh, you just took the whole ball.
I know. Here, take that. Good gosh.
I like using this. I like referencing this every time I can. I follow this guy, Patrick Bet David. He has the PBD podcast. Shout out Patrick Bet David. But he said something one time, and I'll never forget it. And I don't know who. I'm sure he heard it from somebody, but I'm going to give him credit. You're one relationship away from your whole entire life changing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now he talks about that from a business perspective.
Yeah.
But that's so true in what we do. Like, had you not met those people, or maybe that one individual or the group of people, you're, you know, like here you are today.
Yeah, I don't think I would be, you know, in a lot of ways, even like my sponsor, like I still think to this day, like, because at first I asked him to sponsor me, he said no. You know, he's like, no, but I'll take you to meetings and introduce you to people. And we did that for about 2 weeks, you know, and just like my stature and who I am, and I'm anxious, I'm standoff, I'm unapproachable, you know? And I think, and we went to meetings every single night. And I think finally after like a couple weeks, he realized like he may be the only person that could pass this message off to me. And it was just like random. One night he was dropping me back off and he's like, hey, there's a book in the back. Grab it. We're going to get started on some work. You know?
How'd you feel in that moment when he says that? Do you remember? Because at this point, he's just kind of like a sober support.
Yeah. Like for the first time, I felt like I had a real friend.
Wow.
Is this the truth, man? It was like, holy, you know, like this guy genuinely just wants what's best for me. And even like going against some of the stuff, like the boundaries that he set to even sponsor me. You know what I mean? Like he went against some of his beliefs just to be able to try to carry this message to me. And, you know, and still to this day, it's like, that's my right-hand man.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of people talk about like sponsorship and like stuff like that is like this transactional thing, but that is not my experience. Mm-hmm. You know, my sponsor is my best friend, you know?
I'd like to meet this man. He's kind of a mystery at this point. Do you talk about, we've had some people on the podcast that they prefer not to talk about their fellowship that they're in. Where do you fall in that camp?
So,
and I'm fine either way. I don't want to.
So I talk about it, but I wouldn't put like a name on it.
Okay.
Cause like the 11th tradition,
yeah,
where it's like press rate, like God forbid, like I say where I like get and stay clean. And like, don't get me wrong, like I have 7 years clean, but I'm not exempt from anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm one arm's reach away from using just like everybody else.
Yep.
And God forbid something were to happen, they'd be like, oh yeah, look what happens to people over there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'll always like talk about it, but I never put like a face to it. You know what I mean?
Right. That makes sense. I mean, I could see that and understand that perspective. I have a different perspective. I mean, neither of us are right or wrong.
Yeah. Of course.
I just think in this day and age, like the proof is in the pudding. And listen, the listeners know what we're talking about. They're not dumb. It's not like we have some like mystery program.
Yeah.
But you know, it's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's gotten millions of people clean, millions of people sober. People relapse.
Yeah.
They do. My personal belief is it's not a direct representation or a direct result of any sort of program. And
Absolutely.
That goes for any program, whether it's a 12-step program, Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Believers in Recovery, Scientology, I think, has their own freaking thing.
Yeah.
You know, like in the end, it falls on us. I'm of the belief, like, look, when faced and I want to ask you this question, actually, this and your perspective on this. When faced with the temptation, maybe, I'm reluctant to say craving because we don't have those, but I've been in positions myself where it's like, and I'm a drunk, I'm straight alcohol and, Xanax and a little powdered goods, but for the most part, alcohol. I've been in positions where it's like, I haven't actually picked up.
Yeah.
But like, I never spent a day in Florida under the influence. And there's times where, and I've referenced this on the podcast, me and my wife like to go up to Melbourne Beach.
Yeah.
And it's like old Florida, a lot of like, it's just a slow paced Florida, more my speed, right? And there's a couple of like dive bars that you drive by them really slowly. And like, I'll catch myself like looking in.
Oh, of course.
And I'm like, man, I would just love to go spend a couple hours in there,
Yep.
But we're faced with a decision. We're faced with a choice, So when it comes to, and that's in reference to like relapse, I'm of the belief that I got a choice to make.
Yeah.
And for me, it's risk versus reward. Am I willing to risk everything that I've accomplished over the years for this? What I know, there is no reward. And I haven't come to that conclusion off of my own experience.
Yeah.
Because I'm a white chip wonder. Which you don't see a lot of times.
Yeah.
No.
But I've learned from people like you, and I've learned from people like you, that you guys have gone out, you've tested the waters, you've fucked up. I'm not going to do that,
right?
At least for today, but we're all faced with a choice. Have you been in a position like that in the 7 years that you've been clean to where you're like, maybe white knuckling it, like I'm ready to just toss it all away?
Yeah, 100%. Especially early recovery. Like, so it was like during that same time period where I had found that sponsor for the first time. I had just graduated from treatment, moved into an apartment with somebody. I think I had like 4 months clean. He had like 2.5 years. And he was honestly like one of those people I looked up to in the beginning also. And while living with him, he got sick again, started using, and it was like, I'll never forget the days sitting on my bed, looking at the door, looking at my bedroom door shut, but knowing what was on the other side of it.
Oh, damn.
And like coming home and watching, and I worked overnight. So I'd work overnight. I'd come home in the morning and he'd be face down in the apartment and not really knowing if he was still alive. And it was like, in a lot of ways, the meetings were the only safe place that I had to go. I would be in meetings morning, noon, and night if it was possible. People talk about do like 90 and 90. I easily did like
he tripled that
120. You know what I mean? It was like, because even where I was living wasn't safe at the time.
And you were stuck there probably.
Yeah.
Sign a lease. And
I had no other real options,
Yeah.
And then even the option, because I wasn't on a lease or anything like that, but then, still even holding on to like the part of me where it's like, I don't want to abandon him.
Oh.
And if I'm not here, if I don't come home in the morning to check on him, who would? You know what I mean? So almost like out of like a part of obligation almost, like not wanting to give up on him, because I'd see him and he would try to get clean again and he would get sick again. He'd try to get clean again. And I lived there for over a year until I finally had to throw in the towel and be like, you got to figure this out.
Did he? Or you don't know?
No, inevitably, he struggled in and out for years, but actually ended up passing away.
Yeah.
You
used the term a couple times that I don't hear people use, and you reference it as getting sick.
Yeah. Me personally, I'm not confused about the disease of addiction. In a lot of ways, and like you said, and I truly believe it, like once we're introduced to recovery, once we find whatever fellowship we land in, once we start doing some step work and building this foundation, now, like, that's the freedom of it all. Like, the freedom of recovery is like, today I have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for a long time, I didn't have a choice. And then, but once we pick up that first one again, the choice is over with. You know, once we pick up that first one, the disease is back in full effect. And, you know, I don't believe any of us have a moral deficiency or we're bad people. We suffer from a disease, man. You know, and just like cancer, just like anything else, like, yeah, it can go into remission. You can get it treated and get taken, but it can come back if you're not staying up on the things that you got to do to take care of yourself. So, like, that's, you know, where the reference, like, I truly believe where it's just like, a lot of people pick up again because they may not feel like they have a choice, you know, and the disease just runs rampant.
What's that saying? We're not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people trying to get well.
Yeah.
What? Say that again?
We're not bad people trying to get good, to become good people. We're sick people that are just trying to get well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did that ring a bell? Does that make sense?
Got it.
2 + 2 = 4?
Yeah, I got it.
Cool.
You said something, Chris, that you, damn it. How did you say this? Essentially what it was you will be faced with the temptation or otherwise, pick whatever word you want to pick up.
Dilemma.
Unless you're doing what you have to do.
Yeah.
To however you phrase that. Essentially what it is like, we have to treat our addiction. We have to treat our disease on a daily basis. And my question for you is, what does that look like for you today in your sobriety? Like, how is it that you,
like, still today to this recovery, I still attend meetings regularly. I still talk to my sponsor basically on like a daily basis. I still actively work steps. You know, like, where I got clean, like, once you get to the 12th step, it says, like, the steps don't end here. This is just a new beginning. You know what I mean? So, like, and like, it was nailed into me early on where he's like, listen, you'll be writing steps with 5 years clean that look completely different than the step work that you came in with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I still continuously, like, we just got all together, me, my sponsor, and my sponsee brothers. And I think we're going to meet up after the first of the year where we all just started a new, like, a step working series together. You know, it's like still very active in my program, still even very active within my fellowship. You know what I mean? We're going to area service and doing things like that because, like, in the beginning, it was like, I have to go to meetings. I have to go to meetings. I have to do this. I have to do that. And, like, over time now, like, that's just like what I do. You know, like, this is just the way that I live my life. You know, like, I am of service. I still work steps. I still help the still sick and suffering. Because nowadays, you know, don't get me wrong, I still have to do it, but it's not like this chore of like what I have to do. This is just like what I do. You know, it's not like a side job for me. You know, like, this is what I do for a living. You know what I mean? Like, literal, you know, not financial, not this. These are the things that I have to participate in for me to be able to stay alive. You know, in the physical sense or even in the spiritual sense, like what we were talking about earlier.
What are the three of us sitting here, we know what those are.
Yeah.
But take us through some of your, like, maybe daily practices, like to stay healthy physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Like, what are some things that you do that are tangible?
So my biggest one still to this day is regular communication with other people in recovery. just day-to-day life stuff. We're not talking about this, or we're just talking about life and what's going on. And like, still, like, the second step is my favorite step out of all of them, hands down. And like, a lot of people will attach, and it's like, came to believe that power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. And still a lot, and everybody has their own way of working it, where they'll put like that power greater than myself being God or being this or being that. Still, for me, to this day, it's like me plus another recovering addict is a power greater than myself. Me talking to other people, my thoughts, my ideas, what I'm going through, to this, to that. And like, with years clean, a lot of times I can notice when I'm caught up in my insanity, but sometimes I can't. And if I'm not regular communicating with people of what's going on, I never give people the opportunity to be able to restore me back to sanity. Mm-hmm. So it's like, for me, still the communication is huge. Regular meeting attendance is huge. Reading literature, it's just become part of the routine, and now it's like, even in these like later years, I exercise to take care of myself.
You what?
I exercise.
Oh, right. Like gym?
Yeah. Go to the gym and stuff like that, because for a long time, like, I didn't start going to the gym till probably after I had like 2 years clean. And what had happened, I went to this meeting one time, and there were like 5 people picking up like 30 plus years, and these guys are walking up there looking like the crypt keeper. You know what I'm saying? Like, down and each one of them, each one of them was like, listen, like, this wasn't part of the plan. Like, if I thought I was going to get and stay clean and live to grow old, I would have took better care of myself when I was younger. And it was like, I had like 18 months, but it was like the first time that it clicked, where I'm like, holy, like, I might, still at 18 months clean, I didn't really believe this, but it was the first time it clicked that I'm like, I might actually stay clean. Like, I might actually live to grow old, and maybe, just maybe I should take care of myself. You know what I mean? It's like all these breadcrumbs, that have like led this trail to like where my life is today.
Well, and I feel like doing that too is also like making a daily like living amends to yourself, right? Because like, you didn't take care of your body.
Yeah.
We would probably go days without eating, just completely malnourished, whatever. So like, this is what you get to do. It's like a part of making an amends to yourself.
Yeah.
It's like taking care of yourself physically, but also mentally and spiritually along with that.
Yeah.
And
now, even like with like the bigger picture, where it's like, I have a toddler daughter, who needs a father in her life. I have another daughter on the way, actually, now also. I have a wife. I have
the most beautiful wife and daughter, I might add, by the way. Just my gosh.
Yeah, I married up. For sure.
You did. I saw your Instagram.
Yeah. Definitely married up. But I have people and a purpose today to stick around for. Mm-hmm. It's not, thank God it's not all about me,
Well, it was for a long time.
Yeah. And that's at the core of our diseases. It's like the total self-centeredness.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, and I try to apply it. It's like my life is the most selfless that it's ever been.
Yeah.
The one thing that I do for me is continue to grow and continue to stay clean. But even the reason that I do that for myself is for all the people and the things that I love in my life today.
Hell yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. This was a very good one.
This one.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. We're going to start.
Got me tearing up out of nowhere.
We're going to start landing the plane here. This is where we get a little off the cuff. Your tissues right there. Look at you dirtying up my floor.
I didn't mean my legs have been. Look, I'm not worried about the tissue. I'm worried about
got your snot rags all over my floor.
They're tear rags. Thank you.
Chris, dude, your message is awesome, man.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. I got 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And I got a son. So my son's going to be 9. And then I have she's 6, I think.
Yeah.
Or 7. No, she's 6. And then my youngest is 5.
Okay.
So I had them real close together. But there's something different about your daughters, you know, than, I mean, you don't have a son, so it's kind of hard to explain, but being a girl dad is like,
oh, it's a whole different level.
It's crazy.
And it's like wild because, you know, for what it's worth, I did have a son when I first got clean.
Oh.
And, you know, I just got clean. I didn't have my life together. The girl ran off, and he was actually put up for adoption. So it was like, and I'm like still waiting for this day because it's like an open adoption. So at like a young age, I think he's like 5 now. So at a young age, they tell him like, this is your father, you know, so I'm waiting for that day and that opportunity to finally come. But,
wait, they'll tell him that you are his father. So right now he's in an adoption home.
No, he's like with the family, like this young couple. And like, this was like a nightmare staying clean. I had like 6 months clean, holding on for dear life, you know, all these feelings and all this. And I didn't want it to go like that, but I didn't have the resources to fight it neither. So this young couple, very well off up in Georgia, had adopted my son straight from the hospital. Right from the hospital, he went home with them. And for a long time, there was like a lot of pain and a lot of hurt with that. But through continuing to stay clean and going through like the process and like talking with this young couple where they're like, you know, we thank you every day. You know, like you made something possible in our life that we weren't able to do ourselves, and how grateful we are for you. You know, so then it's like, boom, now finally seeing like the whole big picture where it's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
You know, and then even fast forward with like my daughter, who's now, she'll be 3 in February.
February what?
16.
My son's 19th.
19? Yeah. So February 16th, she'll be 3. But my daughter was born with like this rare disability where she wasn't moving her arms while she was in the womb. So it caused, you know, lack of muscle development. It caused all of her joints to lock up. And even going through that process where it's like, you know, I have a 3-week-old daughter having to take her to physical therapy and getting these surgeries and doing all this stuff. And it's like, you know, in a lot of ways, you'll ask in the beginning, like, why? But now, like, I realize, like, you know, God put this little girl into my life because he knows, like, I can love and care about her the way that she deserves and the way that she needs, you know? Yeah. So it's like, since the beginning, like, fatherhood is, like, taken on a completely different meaning for me. Like, this girl is the strongest, most resilient, happy, loving, kind soul that I ever encountered. You know, like this girl is a soldier. You know what I mean? And like to see the things that she's even had to go through at such a young age and still be able to keep a smile on her face is like another one of those things that like fans my flame.
Right.
You know, because with like years clean, you know, you'll get down and you'll get out and you know, why me or why this? And it's like, it takes those things, you know, sometimes it takes those things to like relight that spark inside of you.
Damn.
You know?
How's she doing now?
She's great.
Has full mobility and everything?
So she'll never quite use her arms like any of us do, but like she has like, you know, she's like learning her way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she learns and grows her own way. She does her thing and plays and does, you know what I mean? And
she'll grow up. No, like it'll be normal for her.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be normal. And like, you know, it's just the cards that were dealt. And, but she's one of those spirits where I can tell, like, she's going to play those cards to the fullest.
Yeah.
You know?
Hell yeah, dude. You need another?
No, I got it. We're maintenance tissues over here. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
All right, now we're landing the plane.
All right.
What's the charm on your necklace?
So Jesus,
Okay.
I guess.
What do you mean you guess?
What do you mean?
So, like, I'm not like a religious guy.
Okay.
I'm not a religious guy, but
Is this going to be another tearjerker?
yeah.
Oh gosh.
I got it.
Just let her
We're
hold on
good.
to it.
All right.
We're
no,
good.
this was actually my wife's father's,
Okay.
and my wife's father had passed away from cancer when she was young. So then, after we got married and were together for a few years, I asked my mother-in-law, and they said they would like me to be able to wear his chain.
Wow.
As like a remembrance. Like, even still, like, this chain's older than me. Like, it's still like etched in there from like 1982.
It looks great.
You know what I mean? And
I've been looking at it the whole time.
yeah,
I'm like,
everybody's like, oh wow. I'm like, well, no, this was like inherited.
yeah,
You know what I mean? From from my father-in-law.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you ever take it off?
No.
See, I wish I could. I have to take mine off at night. I can't sleep with it for some reason.
I've like gotten used to it, and it's
Yeah.
like one of those, like, even like, dude, even like my wedding ring, my gold wedding ring is melted gold from his old jewelry.
Wow.
That we were able to make into our wedding ring. And it's like, I don't take this stuff off for nothing, just because it's like, if I ever, like, I know it's always there. And if I ever don't feel it, like, it's like, I know exactly where and when. Like, I'd never take it off.
Yeah.
It means too much.
I was gonna say, it sounds like it's got like not only with the romance side and the wife, but like also in remembrance of her father. Those pieces of jewelry have like multiple meanings.
Yeah.
I would never take it off either. The only jewelry I wear is a necklace, and I don't ever take it off. But that you couldn't. You'd have to cut my finger off to get me to take it off.
So I got a rubber.
Yeah, everybody I know is like, what? I do the rubber. It's uncommon. And I'm like, yeah, but you get used to it. Now, like, this stuff is just like a part of my body.
Yeah.
Just adapted. Don't even know it's there.
So do you plan on staying in Florida for the long haul, or do you have any plans?
This is home now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Where do you live?
it's actually fun. I live right there off Westgate.
He messaged me this morning.
I'm
He's
like 3 minute drive from here.
he's
Oh,
like,
really?
Hey, do you want me to come a couple minutes early? No biggie. I'm like 4 minutes down the street.
Oh, no
I'm
kidding.
like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I live like 2 miles away from here. So right here, West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. What's something interesting about you that we don't know?
Interesting. I really don't know. I like to think of I'm a very
Humble. I told you.
Everybody says that.
I'm very
Humility.
plain Jane. You know what I mean?
Time out. I hope I don't bring up something. Did I hear something about lighting a hospital on fire earlier as I was walking away?
Interesting fact, I'm a convicted arsonist.
All right, my bad. I just didn't know. I didn't know if I was hearing things.
No, that's correct.
Yeah, we talked about it in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how he ended up spending time in prison in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like that's pretty interesting. I don't feel like everybody has that story.
He got pissed off at the hospital.
Yeah, it was, I was high, obviously.
Reacted, not responded.
Yep.
And
it almost took away my entire life.
All right, give the like 2 minute version of
2 minute
story.
version. Got mad, set a hospital bed on fire, got charged with felony 1 arson. And then they're also trying to charge me with prison release reoffender, where that would give you automatic 15 years plus whatever they sentence you to. So I'm on the phone with my dad. The reality is like, hey, by the time I get out, like, you're probably not going to be alive, and I'm going to be your age. Got very, very lucky, and gave them an arson conviction. They gave me a lesser sentence, and, all things considered, was able to skate away very gracefully, considering the situation,
Mm-hmm.
And even being down here, it's like high profile violent crime. I'm in violent crime dorms. Everybody, you know, sitting there with kids my age. I was 23 at the time, you know, sitting there with kids my age that are like, you know, I don't ever get to go home.
Whoa.
You know, young guys, you know, I don't ever get to go home.
Well, man, God's working in your life. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sheesh. You almost got me a couple times. I almost had to pull tissue.
Oh, I'm not even going to say almost. I'm over here. Good gosh.
Lee almost got me yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, the three of you, I tell you what, we need to hang out more.
Yeah.
And you guys aren't far away. Where is this place?
Lake Worth, right?
15 minutes down the road.
So tell us what you do for the Palms and
so
stuff like that.
with the Palms, I'm, you know, my title is alumni coordinator. It's a fancy title for man of the people. You know, whatever the guys that are there need, whether it's experience, strength, and hope, or to this or to that, it's like I'm that guy who's been in their shoes that could help them along the way.
Yeah.
You know, and then even further down the line, there's still people that I talk to who live on other sides of the country and other states with multiple years clean that I still talk to on a regular basis. You know, and it's like, in a lot of ways, all I ever try to do is be a friend to them, like the people were a friend to me when I first got clean.
Yeah.
Because that's what saved my life.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Destiny, anything else?
No, I was just really, I mean, my gosh, I am extremely amazed and impressed from where you were to where you are now, like the man that you are, the support that you offer because of what was like so freely given to you, to just help other addicts and alcoholics in the beginning of their journey, right? And it was just refreshing because I went and visited them last week to just be able to like sit down and talk recovery. I even think we brought it up and I was like, oh, we got to get these guys on the podcast, you know? But dude, thank you for like coming out. And I mean, that's a message of hope. 1,000%. I know you're over there trying to be like humble and whatever, but like that's a message of hope. And I know that you've helped a lot of men, a lot of people in recovery, and you're going to continue. So like, dude, thank you for what you do.
Thank you for the opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, who would have thought?
Yeah. I know. It's crazy. All right. Well, let's wrap this up, shall we?
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.